An exciting new trailer has dropped for Silent Hill F, revealing a lot more about the main character Hinako, as well as showing us more of the unsettling beauty, grotesque horror, and just the overall visual feast of nightmares in store for us, with lots of new hints, cryptic clues, cult-like imagery, and twisted monsters sprinkled in for us to dive into and analyze. This trailer looked absolutely amazing and has me even more hyped than ever before. Like, seriously, this game is probably my most anticipated game of the year right now. I see a ton of similarities and themes with some of Ryukishi's past works, and I can't wait to dive into them, as well as analyzing and breaking down the key moments from this twisted new trailer. Once again, I will be looking back at some of Ryukishi's past works, comparing some of the events and themes from them to the new trailer, and we'll be diving into the details to unleash two compelling and disturbing theories I have that might truly unravel the terrifying mystery that Ryukishi has unleashed once and for all. Although the transmission didn't have as much, or actually any gameplay footage from the game as I had initially hoped, we did get a lot more info from Ryukishi himself, along with the producers on various aspects of the game, such as the main character, setting, themes, as well as some insight on Ryukishi's thoughts and directions for the game. Once again, we get another female protagonist for the series, which is an awesome addition. The first teaser hinted at this, but since Ryukishi's previous works usually followed a male protagonist, I was unsure whether the girl in the teaser trailer could be the main protagonist or not, but thankfully she is. In the trailer, we are introduced to Hinako Shimazu, a high school girl living in the small, secluded town of Ibisugoka, who begins to become haunted by grotesque monsters as a familiar fog begins taking over the town, twisting it into a landscape of overgrown flowers, decay, and vines. Like Ryukishi's Higurashi series, which took place in a fictional town based on a real location in Japan, the town of Ibisugoka in Silent Hill F is based on Kanayama-giro in the Gifu prefecture. Throughout the transmission, we also learn from Ryukishi and various members of the development team that the team went for a completely 100% Japanese horror focus this time, emphasizing its Japanese essence while maintaining the series' core themes of portraying characters' struggles with the evil within themselves, such as sin, discontent, and conflict, this time with a female protagonist who isn't just being pulled along by the story like Heather, but someone who can actually make her own choices. The trailer reminded me a lot, actually, of Japanese horror games I've played and enjoyed, such as Kuon, Fatal Frame, and Forbidden Siren, so I'm really interested and excited in seeing a more Japanese-focused Silent Hill game this time. Shortly after the transmission, we also got some new info from the ESRB and Steam ratings of the game, and as expected, Ryukishi does not disappoint with the disturbing gore and violence he is known for. The Steam page also goes into a little more detail on some of the content and themes that we, as Hinako, will be dealing with or facing throughout the game, which is gender discrimination, child abuse, bullying, drug-induced hallucinations, torture, and graphic violence. All depictions based on the customs and the culture of the 1960s time period in Japan. First thing of note from this is the drug-induced hallucinations, which could very well imply the existence of the Order, the main local religious cult from Silent Hill, perhaps having some kind of role to play in the story, with its influence possibly being spread to Japan with the white Claudia flowers, or a similar type of cult that either uses flowers or drugs as part of their rituals to possibly induce hallucinations or communicate with the supernatural in some way. For those unfamiliar with the earlier Silent Hill game, white Claudia is a perennial herb that grows near water sources in the resort town of Silent Hill, Maine. It was thought to have spiritual properties because the seeds within it contain a hallucinogen and has been used in religious ceremonies in Silent Hill since the ancient past to supposedly help the natives communicate with spirits, or possibly enabling them to tap into the spirit world. The Order also made use of it for their rituals, but after seeing the effects of it on others, they begin manufacturing it into a white powdered substance and illicit recreational drug called PTV for Michael Kaufman, a doctor at Alchemelia Hospital, to sell to tourists on the black market. The description of the game having drug-induced hallucinations suggests that my earlier theory on the white Claudia flowers, as well as their spiritual and hallucinatory effects, could very well be at play here. It appears that white Claudia, or some other type of flower known for its spiritual or drug-induced hallucinations, could indeed be a part of this fox cult and the shrine rituals that Hinako seems to be a part of. If we consider that white Claudia could have spread outside of Silent Hill, there's a strong possibility that the drug or a similar substance made its way to Japan in the the 1960s, either intentionally or by accident. As I'm sure most people already know, the hippie and drug movement started in the mid-60s and early 70s. This era also saw increased interest in psychedelic drugs, particularly in Western culture, which could have led to the importation of exotic substances, including hallucinogens like White Claudia or PTV. From around 1967, the main belief system of the hippies, such as harmony with nature and the widespread use of recreational drugs, spread around the world during that time. Given that the Order in Silent Hill is a cult with global reach, it's entirely possible that they could have distributed White Claudia to Japan as part of their rituals or worship, or to just expand their influence around the world. The cult's aim is often to manipulate or control individuals using psychotropic substances and rituals, a practice they could have easily spread outside of the town. The 1960s in particular would have been the perfect time for them to try to spread their influence across international borders as more and more people explored and experimented with mind-altering substances. Shinto symbolism also seems strong in the trailer, and as an ancient belief system, it does include a wide variety of rituals, some of which do involve altered states of consciousness, though not through drugs in the modern sense. Shinto shrines sometimes use sacred symbols like plants or mushrooms, believed to have spiritual significance, though these are typically not associated with recreational drugs. This could be where Silent Hill F and Ryukishi have drawn inspiration from, mixing real-world Shinto beliefs with more occult influences like the Order's use of the White Claudia flower and its drug. Additionally, the fungus-like flower seen in the game may also be seen as a metaphor for spiritual communication or corruption, a concept found in Shinto rituals that deal with purification as well. We know Michael Kaufman didn't start selling the drug until shortly before the events of Silent Hill 1, which seems to take place between the 1980s and the early 1990s, so this drug might not have been readily available to sell back in the 1960s. Even still though, the White Claudia flower could bloom in some parts of Japan, or the flower itself could have been imported to Ibiso-goka. The town itself might have unknowingly, or perhaps intentionally, imported the plant from Silent Hill after hearing about the potential spiritual effects from it, or they might have been tricked into importing the plant from members of the Order who were trying to spread the plant to other areas around the world to further the Order's influence. The Order could even be operating in Japan or Ibiso-goka, using and distributing the White Claudia flowers to control or manipulate some villages, making them susceptible to psychic influence, ritual abuse, or hallucinatory experiences that blur the line between reality and nightmare. The flowers could also have been used to ritually induce altered states during sacrifice or ritualistic purification as well. All this being said though, it could very well be possible that there's simply no connection here to the Order, the White Claudia flower, or even to the town of Silent Hill at all. It could simply be that the flowers seen in the trailer, in particular the Higanbana or spider lilies, could also be involved in the rituals used by the mysterious fox cult and the shrine maidens we see during the trailer. Higanbana are considered poisonous and are seen as spiritual flowers with their own superstitions and myths surrounding them related to the underworld, death, rebirth, and the cycle of life. They are even said to be used on graves so that foxes won't dig up or disturb the bodies. So it wouldn't surprise me if part of the reason why Hinako seems haunted by another world full of Higanbana and other flowers is because these flowers were also used as part of her ritual, maybe even having ingested it as part of her ritual or sacrifice, or possibly even being given them to suppress her true form or nature before this ritual, especially if she's a kitsune or fox spirit in human form. First thing we get a better glimpse into though is the other world that Hinako experiences, which is called the Dark Shrine, and seems to be related to some ceremony, trauma, or dilemma that Hinako seems to be dealing with in regards to being involved with performing some sort of ritual as part of a cult or religious group of shrine maidens. It appears that this time the fog world brings with it an overgrowth of beautiful and grotesque flowers, consisting of the spider lilies from the earlier trailer, as well as cherry blossoms and others that continually take over the town and get worse based on Hinako's mental state. This is until Hinako passes out and wakes up in the Dark Shrine Otherworld, which seems to be an ominous and eerie temple filled with fox statues, rituals, shrine maidens, and a priest. It also seems like every time the Otherworld starts to manifest and take over, we see Hinako begin to hold her head and double over in pain, almost as if experiencing some kind of headache or struggling to deal with something going on in her head, and also experiencing distorted red and white tinted glitches. We then see her pass out and wake up in the Dark Shrine Otherworld, which seems to hint at some kind of inner trauma affecting her psyche, almost like some sort of psychological battle of the mind. It seems obvious that Hinako is some kind of shrine priestess or maiden, or someone chosen for some kind of ritual or sacrifice, possibly even taking over the role of continuing her parents' or the cult's teachings. Right now, though, it's unknown who this cult is, if it's connected to the Order or not. Maybe it is some other sect from the Order, or just a completely different cult or group altogether with no connections or ties to Silent Hill at all. Still, it would be nice if this group was connected with Silent Hill or some other sect of the Order, though, in some way. Some people have pointed out the similarities with the three-leaf symbol they use and the symbol that the Order uses. Having said that, though, Ryukishi's previous works have focused a lot on various fanatical religious cults and organizations who believed in their own sacred rituals, ideologies, and practices, along with worshipping their own deities, so it could very well be a completely separate religious cult or group not even connected to the town of Silent Hill. Ryukishi did this with Higurashi, and even more in Iwaihime. In fact, I honestly can't help but notice even more similarities to Iwaihime in this new trailer regarding Hinako, the Kitsune worshipping shrine, and this ritual. In Iwaihime, the central female character Toe Kurakami had been tasked with containing the curse of the deer god Rokugami that occurred 1,000 years ago, and under the influence of it, she was tormented by spiritual and psychological disorders all the time, as well as becoming possessed by the curse and the spirit of Rokugami and his sisters. In that game, we found out 1,000 years ago that a group of hunters were attempting to hunt for food near the bottom of a mountain belonging to the deer god Rokugami. During the hunt, they ran into a wandering priestess, the Iwaihime, or festival princess, Suzunome. Suzunome stays in the hunter's village, and the villagers ask her to channel Rokugami to save them from an inadequate autumn harvest. Suzunome performs a ritual, and her body is possessed by Rokugami, who declares that he will send deer to the villagers for 7 days after the full moon to serve as food for the village to survive autumn, and would allow them to sell the golden antlers for high prices so the village could survive. However, after surviving the autumn, the villagers grew greedy and began hunting deer on Rokugami's mountain in search of more golden antlers, slaughtering all of the deer on the mountain. After Rokugami and his deer were sacrificed, his sisters take vengeance via a multi-generational curse. The curse manifests as black soot, which begins to fall, raining over the village, destroying their crops, and irreversibly staining all of the golden antlers they harvested from the deer. The only way the villagers can save themselves from the soot is for one of them to be sacrificed, and the sacrificed bloodline must also carry that soot for eternity. The villagers attempt to minimize the curse by using Suzunome, the priestess and vessel of Rokugami, as a sacrifice, somehow trapping the soot inside her body. The descendants of Suzunome, including Toe Kurakami, are made to carry the cursed soot in their bloodlines until enough soot has accumulated for Rokugami's curse to unleash a calamity and devastate mankind. Rokugami and his sisters appear as envoys of the curse, their appearance taking on the form of Suzunome's descendants, but with large deer antlers growing from their heads. Toe is aware of the curse and her destined role as the current Iwaihime, forced to suffer. Her seemingly apathetic demeanor is a result of this knowledge and her isolation, having been marked by tragedy for generations, as the daughters descended from Suzunome are destined to suffer due to the unresolved trauma of the past. If we look at the new trailer for Silent Hill F, it seems like Ryukishi may be using a lot of similar themes and ideas from the story of Iwaihime, like Ryukishi did with Iwaihime, and having a deer god being at the center of the story. This time he seems to be exploring fox folklore and mythology using foxes or kitsunes as the main motif for the main conflict between Hinako and this dark shrine, which seems to be connected to foxes and possibly some kind of kitsune deity or fox god that these shrine maidens and cult members appear to worship. This is really exciting to me, since I've always been fascinated by foxes, and I frequently see them in the countryside and even take pictures of them on occasion. Ryukishi has made works that focus on yokai, deities, shrine maidens, rituals, cults, witches, time loops, along with psychological trauma, and we see all of these themes present in some form or another in this new trailer. Could Hinako be like Toei Kurakami from Iwaihime, someone tasked with containing some kind of curse in Ibusugoka that was passed down in her family and village? Or is she the next in line as some sort of sacrifice to stop some curse from starting or spreading? Perhaps she was raised in a secluded place or shrine by her parents or the shrine's cult member, brought up that way to be isolated because of the impending ritual or sacrifice, in order to be more accepting of it. These types of rituals and sacrifices are used a lot in the Fatal Frame series, with a similar type of curse or calamity that can spread or take over the person being sacrificed if the ritual goes wrong, or even if the person being sacrificed has any doubts or regrets about being chosen or not wanting to go through with the ritual. It seems like Silent Hill will be exploring some of these similar types of themes and rituals. It could also be that this ritual failed due to Hinako not wanting to go through with it, which unleashed a curse upon the whole village. Or it could be that the curse succeeded and Hinako is now dead and possessed now by the fox or fox deity. To me, it honestly appears that Hinako is struggling to accept her fate in this dark shrine to be a sacrifice, and seems to be having a hard time coming to terms with her fate. She probably wishes she could escape her destiny so that she could have friends and have a life of her own with the boy she likes too, but deep down knowing that she can't escape her fate as she struggles with everything being taken from her life, her friends, and possibly her family as well. This leads to my first big theory, one that explores Japanese, Chinese, and Korean mythology and folklore of kitsunes, deities, as well as the prominent Rokurokubi picture that we see in the trailer. During the trailer, we see a lot of kitsune, aka fox statues, including a 9-tailed kitsune being worshipped or surrounded by smaller kitsune, as well as the shrine priestesses wearing fox no masks, which strongly suggests that kitsune or foxes could play a significant role in the game's story and the nature of its horror. If you look closely at the kitsune masks that these priestesses wear, you'll actually notice that the masks almost seem grafted, stitched, fused, or somehow even sewn onto their faces. There doesn't appear to be any strings or backing to the mask holding them in place, which actually leads me to think that perhaps this ritual of slicing off one's face is used to become one with a fox spirit or a fox deity. If the masks replace carved off faces, it strongly resembles a ritual of sacrifice or transcendence, where these priestesses could have cut off their faces, giving up their identities and souls to become permanent vessels, avatars, or hosts for kitsune spirits that want to resurrect their kitsune deity, becoming cursed mediums and living tools for the kitsune, with Hinako possibly being prepared or raised as the main vessel for the fox deity. This grotesque replacement of the face with a mask mirrors that. In folklore, though, once possessed by a kitsune, victims may mimic fox behavior, speak in a foreign voice, or experience physical changes, so the stitched mask may be a literal realization of this myth. In Ryukishi's worlds, including Iwaihime, Higurashi, and Umineko, physical mutilation often serves as a spiritual boundary and a line between human and supernatural, just like the rituals performed by the Sonozaki family and those who worship the god Oyashiro-sama in the Higurashi series. In Higurashi, the curse of Oyashiro-sama and the shrine's rituals are misunderstood as divine, when they're in fact cultural systems of control and manipulation. The whole village of Hinamizawa worshipped a vengeful deity, who actually turns out to be someone completely unexpected and totally different to what the villagers thought they were. In Iwaihime, Rokugami, the deer god, and his sisters possess generations of girls, warping their minds and bodies until they become this curse's ideal form. But what if it's more than that? What if Hinako is not just a victim of a fox cult? What if Hinako is actually a kitsune goddess or a fox spirit reborn as a human girl but can't remember it, and the ritual is meant to awaken her true 9-tailed kitsune goddess form? In this case, the fox mask isn't a curse, it's her true face and form. To embrace her destiny, she must kill her human self, or be destroyed by the part of her that still clings to it. This is my first theory, and the one that I most want to see and am most excited about Ryukishi possibly exploring in the game, especially if they go in this direction. I honestly believe that Hinako is a reincarnation of a fox deity in human form, or a fox that turned into a human to live a normal life. There is also the possibility that Hinako is simply possessed and taken over by some type of fox spirit or fox deity, or she could simply be a mortal girl, transformed into a kitsune through trauma and ritual. But I honestly think it would be way more interesting if it turned out that Hinako was actually a kitsune goddess or a kitsune spirit that was living or trying to live as a normal human girl with no memory of her real self. Ryukishi has explored this before in Higurashi with Rika and Hinamizawa's deity Oyashiro-sama. Now, before you dismiss it right off the bat, let's take a look at some of the mythos and folklore regarding foxes or kitsune. This way we can examine clues that seem to hint at this being the case, and further analyze the different ways in which Ryukishi could incorporate the kitsune and what their connection could be to Hinako. In Korean folklore, the fox is known as the kumiho. They are known to carry marbles in their mouth to steal wisdom from humans, usually through a kiss. In Korea, the fox spirit is said to take on a human form at the age of 100 years old. However, the fox spirit requires the use of a human skull that it places on top of its head in order to transform. It can also devour a human to take on their shape, and will take on the form of someone their intended victim knows, so that they are more trusting and easier to get close enough to. One of the telling features that you are dealing with a kumiho would be that it acts differently than the person it is betraying, either saying or eating things that they usually would not. They will almost always have a tail that they will try their best to hide as well, usually refusing to turn its back towards someone. In Chinese folklore, the fox are known as the hulijing. They are almost always a female who works to seduce men of great power, such as generals and emperors, in the hopes of manipulating politics purely for their own entertainment and greed. In China, stories of the fox spirit describe her as appearing to be very kind to the man she is with. However, she is always vicious and full of trickery towards any other women in the household. She enjoys playing cruel and often fatal tricks on women, but always seems to manage to give it the appearance of an accident. The men often come to power and wealth very quick, but once the hulijing has taken all the energy generated by his hubris, or when the man begins to become old and is no longer able to produce the energy she craves, the hulijing will leave, taking her immortal beauty and good luck with her. In Chinese classic text, it describes them as beasts shaped like a fox with 9 tails that sounds like a baby and eats men. In Japan, though, foxes hold a significant and multifaceted role in Japanese folklore and mythology. They are often depicted as intelligent, mystical beings with the ability to shapeshift and possess supernatural powers capable of either great kindness, cunning, or cruel trickery. Their association with deities, their shape-shifting abilities, and their long history in Japanese storytelling have cemented them in place as one of the most iconic and fascinating figures in Japanese mythology. Kitsune are widely regarded as clever and often mischievous tricksters. They can transform into human form, often appearing as beautiful women, young men, or elderly individuals. Sometimes a kitsune's human form may retain subtle fox-like features, such as a tail, especially when drunk or careless, a fox-shaped shadow, or a reflection showing their true form. They are also said to dislike dogs, and their presence can even sometimes break their disguises. Kitsune have multiple tails, ranging from 1 to 9. The number of tails is a strong indicator of their age, wisdom, and power. A 9-tailed fox is considered incredibly ancient, powerful, and wise, sometimes even attaining celestial status. In some Shinto-adjacent folklore, particularly those depicting mischievous or malevolent kitsune, they can possess humans, typically women, causing mysterious behavior, illness, madness, or beauty beyond human norms, as well as causing facial changes, especially in the eyes, mouth, or even the entire face. Some even gain divinity after living 1,000 years, acquiring 9 tails and divine power. While all kitsune possess supernatural abilities, though, they are often split into 2 types with multiple variations. their own characteristics, and their own roles. Zenko and celestial kitsune are benevolent kitsune, typically associated with the Shinto deity Inari, the god or goddess of rice, agriculture, and prosperity, or the Buddhist goddess Dakini. They are seen as divine messengers and servants of the gods, facilitating communications between humans and kami, or gods. Zenko can even be enshrined as gods themselves, or as manifestations of higher deities. They are often described as white and acting as guardians and bringers of good fortune, and sometimes bridging the gap between the human and the spirit realms. Shrines dedicated to Inari frequently feature fox statues with red scarves or bibs. Zenko society is extremely complex, mirroring human society with different levels of families, tribes, even acquiring new social ranks and honors as they age. Evil behavior frequently attributed to kitsune is almost always the work of a yako, or nogitsune, not a zenko. Whereas yakos have no interest in advancement in kitsune society and do not have a divine soul, zenko work hard to improve themselves and increase their social standing. Zenko may occasionally play tricks or pranks on people, but they do not seriously harm or kill humans. Yako and wild foxes are the most mischievous or even malevolent kitsune who are not associated with Inari. They embody the trickster archetype and are often depicted as evil tricksters who enjoy playing pranks on humans, using clever manipulation, sometimes with harmful intention. They are most known for transforming into humans, and in folk tales where humans are tormented, tricked, or possessed by kitsune, the culprit is almost always a yako. They dislike bright light and hide from the sun during the daytime. They are also afraid of bladed objects and will avoid swords and knives, which could very well explain Hinako's fear of the blade and the shrine maidens using the blade for their ritual. They like to sneak into human inhabited areas at night to steal some of their favorite foods: wax candles, lamp oil, lacquer, alcohol, and fried tofu. They are usually the ones responsible for possessions. They can create illusions, manipulate people's minds and perceptions, and lead them astray. Kitsune-tsuki, or possession by a fox spirit, is also commonly performed by yako. There are three main types of kitsune possession: possession of an individual, possession of a family, and possession for use as a medium. When a kitsune possesses an individual, it is often in retaliation for something done to the kitsune, such as killing one of its family members, but other times it can be just to punish humans they simply don't like, or for their own amusement. The possessing spirit causes its host to behave erratically and emotionally, making them prone to violent outbursts and hysteria. Victims are often able to speak and read in languages they previously had no knowledge of. Kitsune can even control their host like a puppet, causing them to do all sorts of evil things. Women are usually their favorite target. This is sometimes said to be because women are weaker and easier to possess, but it is also because the yako can feed off of a woman's life force. In Japanese folklore, it is even said that in southern Kusho, entire family lines would get possessed by a yako, and families that raised yako or those possessed by one would also have their progeny possessed, and if they were no longer able to support it, it would possess its cattle and horses. It is also said that the people of families that have a yako could incite the yako to possess those they have bad relationships with. Despite these conflicts with humans though, yaku do occasionally interact positively with people. There are many tales of wild kitsune returning favors for those who are kind to them. There are even stories about men happily marrying yako disguised as beautiful women. These stories can range from heartbreaking to tragic, often ending with the fox's true identity revealed and them having to leave. Both the Zenko and in some cases individual yako can act as protectors of specific places, families, or even the land itself. When a kitsune possesses a family, that family becomes rich and fertile. Those families were called Kitsune-mochi and were able to manipulate the possessing kitsune spirits. In addition to bringing prosperity to their owners, kitsune could be used to bring ruin upon a family's enemies as well. Kitsune-mochi people use these spirits to place curses, possess, or bring sickness to others. Kitsune-mochi families kept their fox spirits for generations, handing down their secrets from parent to child. A Kitsune-mochi family would honor and care for its possessing spirit, for it could just as easily bring the same ruin upon their entire family line. People suspected of belonging to Kitsune-mochi families were often mistrusted for their unnatural abilities and feared by their neighbors. However, as powerful as a Kitsune-mochi may be, they are nothing compared to familiar fox owners. These cases of fox witchcraft in modern Japan are enacted by Tsukemono Suji families, or hereditary witches. These hereditary witches usually consist of sorcerers, magicians, mediums, and fortune tellers, and are often feared and venerated, usually using the foxes like familiars. They usually use osakai, izuna, and kuragitsune, which are Tsukemono, small yokai known as pipe foxes or tube foxes the size of a weasel that can possess and manipulate humans. They can use these foxes to perform curses, divulge a person's past, or foretell their future, amongst other things. Generally curses though, so most people distrust them. The kuragitsune serve the whole family, also known as kuramochi, and are said to multiply in number when a marriage in a family is held. But if they have over 75, then they will bring the family to ruin. The fox could have once possessed Hinako's family line as well, granting beauty, intelligence, or social power, but at a huge cost. Kitsune-tsuki, for use as a medium, involves inviting a kitsune to possess a willing person in order to perform divinations, and sometimes even entire bloodlines. The kitsune would enter the medium's body and speak through her mouth, predicting the future or giving secret knowledge. This was a very dangerous practice though, as it relies on the willingness of the kitsune to leave the body after the possession, which may not happen as kitsune are very powerful creatures. Recognizing kitsune possession in a person can be difficult, but there are a few ways to diagnose it. A small lump can often be found on the victim's body. This is the place where the fox spirit resides. If pushed or pricked, this lump slips away and hides in another part of the body. It cannot be caught or removed by any physical means. Because of widespread belief in fox possession, a number of folk cures have been invented over the centuries to deal with it. Exorcism was usually performed at Inari shrines. One fairly benign treatment included having a victim licked from head to toe by dogs, which foxes fear intensely. Other, less fortunate victims were beaten or burned alive in attempts to drive out the fox spirit. Unfortunately, this sometimes killed the patients before driving out the kitsune. The ESRB rating describes people being burned alive, which could actually be Hinako or one of the fox shrine maidens attempting to burn her or someone else in order to drive out some vengeful fox spirit. Judging by the trailer, we can at least assume that the shrine Hinako visits worships foxes and some sort of powerful fox deity. It is possible that they worship Inari, as benevolent kitsune are often guardians of shrines and sacred spaces. The rural setting with rice fields seen in the trailer could be a significant clue for this. If the shrine of Inari was defiled, neglected, or if a great injustice has occurred on the land they protect, Inari and the fox spirits there could become twisted and vengeful, akin to the malevolent kitsune. Like what happened in Iwaihime, a powerful ancient kitsune or a group of them may be the primary antagonist. Its motives tied to a past grievance passed down through Hinako's family, the villagers, or the shrine itself. The curse affecting the town and Hinako could be a manifestation of their anger at the ritual having failed because of Hinako. Perhaps Hinako's inner conflict with performing this ritual for Inari or another fox deity, or even not going through with it, has led to the malevolent kitsune or fox deity to curse and possess Hinako to force her to accept her fate. Hinako might encounter characters who are not what they seem, their appearance is shifting or their intentions unclear, mirroring the shape-shifting nature of a kitsune, possibly even taking on the form of her friends as well. This would up the psychological horror by making Hinako question what is real and what is an illusion created by the kitsune, playing on her fears and insecurities. Having said that though, I honestly lean more into the idea that Hinako is actually a kitsune deity that was given human form, or some kind of vessel for this kitsune deity. Is Hinako the next in line in her family for some kind of fox deity or yako possession? Or could she even be the reincarnation of a fox deity or yako? I think she could actually be a kitsune or kitsune goddess who was given or transformed into a human form at a very young age and grew up forgetting about her identity as a kitsune, or possibly choosing to forget it and locking that kitsune part of herself away deep inside so she could live and experience a human life with friends instead. Next up in the trailer, we see a Rokurokubi strangling a fox. Rokurokubi are Japanese yokai, or supernatural creatures from Japanese folklore that come in two variations, which are the Rokurokubi and the Nukekubi. By day, they appear as ordinary human women, often blending seamlessly into society. However, by night, night they gain the terrifying ability to extend their necks to extraordinary lengths. Unlike most yokai, which are born as monsters though, Rokurokubi and Nukekubi are former humans, transformed by a curse resulting from some evil deed or past sin, and sometimes even inherited through their family. Perhaps they sinned against the gods or nature, or perhaps they were unfaithful to their husbands. In those cases though, it usually turned out that the husbands or the fathers were the ones who actually committed the sin. But by some cruel twist of fate, the men escaped the punishment and the women received the curse instead, since the Rokurokubi curse only affects women. Their nighttime activities can range from relatively harmless mischief, like spying or licking lamp oil, to more sinister acts, like frightening people, and even in some darker tales, attacking and feeding on small animals and humans. A common thread is that some Rokurokubi are unaware of their condition, believing their nocturnal escapades to be mere dreams. The Nukekubi, though, are a little different and are considered a bit more malevolent than the Rokurokubi. Instead of just stretching their necks, a Nukekubi's head actually detaches itself completely from its body and flies around independently at much further distances. Nukekubi possess a thirst for blood as well and are said to be way more violent than Rokurokubi. Their flying head sucks the blood of victims like a vampire. Nukekubi also brutally bite humans and animals to death. Treatments for the curse of the Rokurokubi and the Nukekubi have long been sought after, particularly because these women can often pass their curses on to their daughters, who show signs as they mature. Afflicted girls were sold off to live in brothels or human circuses, or even forced to take their own lives in order to preserve their family's honor. I love how we seem to be seeing a lot of Japanese folklore here, which is really fascinating to me because I love diving into Japanese mythology and folklore. We also see a Kakashi, which us Westerners usually refer to as a scarecrow. In Japan, scarecrows are considered far more than just a collection of straw and rags. One notable figure is Kuebiko, the Shinto god of knowledge and agriculture, who often is depicted as a scarecrow who, though unable to walk, knows everything that transpires in the fields. Scarecrows are also seen as guardians, sometimes temporarily inhabited by mountain deities who descend to oversee the crops. This establishes the Kakashi as a vessel, capable of holding a spiritual or conscious entity and serving as a silent witness to events. The first hatless scarecrow in the field we see could signify that the traditional guardian spirit, perhaps Kuebiko or a local mountain deity, has departed or been forced out. This could leave the Kakashi or village itself vulnerable to other influences. In other works though, such as Junji Ito's Kakashi, we have a village that creates scarecrows in the likeness of deceased loved ones, with the hopes of these scarecrows eventually becoming vessels for the spirits of the dead to inhabit, allowing the villagers there to communicate with their deceased family members. The narrative Junji Ito explores is the psychological impact of this practice on the villagers, the disturbing nature of attempting to cling to the dead, and the possibility that something genuinely supernatural is occurring, with the scarecrows perhaps not merely being symbolic vessels, but becoming real vessels for restless, distorted, lingering spirits. In the trailer, we see a scarecrow appearing to wear a school uniform similar to Hinako's. This visual parallel is unlikely to be just a coincidence, and actually suggests some kind of link between this Kakashi and Hinako herself. In addition to the scarecrow though, we do also see a very brief glimpse of a female yokai or monster resembling the infamous Slit-Mouthed woman from Japanese legends, and the picture of the Rokurokubi attacking the fox seems to be accompanied by either two yokai or demons helping her as well. This suggests that there are two or more opposing forces at work inside of Hinako, and some sort of struggle for control of either her soul, body, identity, or even all three. Kitsune can live for centuries, which could imply the fox spirit or kitsune that the village or cult worships has haunted or provided prosperity to the village for generations. Maybe this fox deity or kitsune guardian turned into a human, longing to live a human life and being reborn as a human, or wanting a new vessel to be sacrificed so they could possess them every so many years. If Hinako was possessed in some kind of ritual by a fox spirit or a fox deity, or if perhaps Hinako is a kitsune or a fox deity transformed and living in a human form but unaware of it, it's possible that her presence could attract more yokai, like a Rokurokubi, to manipulate Hinako and feed off of her fears and negative emotions. This Rokurokubi could even be connected to a village curse for women like Hinako, or those of her bloodline who tried to escape her destiny or disobey cultural roles controls placed on her by the village and this cult. These yokai and the Rokurokubi could be working together, trying to suppress or destroy the fox deity or her true kitsune nature inside that Hinako is destined to blossom into. If we consider the painting showing the Rokurokubi, this Rokurokubi might have a historical role within Ibusugoka related to the fox deity or the other evil spirits or demons in that area. It could even be that the Rokurokubi and other yokai or demons of the village were suppressed or held back by this cult and their fox deity through performing this ritual or sacrifice. So now, if the town's spiritual balance has been disrupted by Hinako's ritual going wrong or Hinako not becoming a fox deity, then perhaps it unleashes the Rokurokubi and all the yokai and demons on the land. The Rokurokubi's connection to the fox in the painting could imply a conflict between different spiritual entities and yokai, with Hinako being caught in the middle, with both of them after her. If Hinako is carrying a heavy burden of guilt, perhaps related to some kind of betrayal hinted at in the trailer, or the circumstances surrounding the town's decay, the Rokurokubi could also be a physical manifestation of this hidden darkness, or a cursed punishment for her actions of not going through with the ritual, or maybe even the actions of someone close to her, perhaps even related to this boy named Shu that she seems to like or be friends with. In stories of Rokurokubi, it often turns out that the curse suffered by the women is usually due to the manipulations or actions done by their boyfriends or husbands. So perhaps by falling in love with this boy Shu, Hinako might have messed up the ritual, causing her to become cursed or unleashing the curse upon her and the village. If we examine Ryukishi's previous works though, it seems likely that Ryukishi will also be using these supernatural yokai and deities to symbolize a deeply personal representation of Hinako's psychological burdens, as well as her own inner trauma and the pain that she is experiencing of being at war with two or possibly more sides of herself. A good example of this would be Ryukishi's Higenbana visual novel, which utilizes the concept of vengeful yokai, born from the negative emotions and injustices suffered by individuals within a school setting, such as being bullied by other students or taken advantage of by scummy perverted teachers. If we look at it like that, this could also be a monstrous representation of the negative emotions stirring within Hinako. The Rokurokubi's ability to transform dramatically at night can symbolize unwanted change, loss of control, or a hidden monstrous nature lurking beneath a seemingly normal exterior. The Rokurokubi could be a representation of the terrifying transformations happening within Hinako or around her, highlighting the loss of her former ordinary life and possibly symbolizing the ugly truth, or what she believes to be the sinful part of herself that doesn't want to go through with the ritual and wants to live a normal human life instead. After all, the Rokurokubi are women severed from societal roles, turned into monsters. They represent shame, guilt, deformity, repression, and systematic cruelty. It reflects the monstrous self, aka the result of trauma, societal pressure, and inner rage, as well as representing the monster that Hinako feels she is becoming, or the side of her that represents the shame, guilt, and the ugly truth inside of her. If we look at the Kitsune by comparison, they are beautiful, cunning, wise, divine, representing empowerment, vengeance, and ancient femininity. In folklore, they can advance in ranks to become wholly divine beings, or they can choose not to advance and become malevolent Yako tricksters. This could be what's happening within Hinako. She is a fox spirit or fox deity in human form. She can either choose to embrace her destiny and become a divine celestial fox deity. She could decide to stay as a human, or she could become a malevolent Yako spirit. In the shrine artwork, the Rokurokubi isn't just attacking a fox. It's actively trying to suppress or destroy it, possibly out of jealousy, fear, or shame. Perhaps the fox symbolizes the divine part of Hinako, or Hinako's true kitsune self. If she is a fox, she needs to perform this ritual in order to be able to move on to the afterlife, to be at peace, or to become the new vessel of the fox deity, therefore attaining spiritual wisdom and divinity, awakening the fox or divine part within herself to ascend to become the cult's deity. This may be for the greater good of of Hinako and the village. But for Hinako, though, we see these fox masks and the fox statues as malicious and evil with snarling mouth, because that is how Hinako sees the cult, the shrine maidens, and the ritual. They all seem malevolent to her because she blames them, the fox deity and this ritual, for taking everything from her. The life she wants to lead, her friends, and the boy she likes. If Hinako really is a fox deity or fox spirit in human form that doesn't remember, then the Rokurokubi might not even be a real physical creature or supernatural being, but could also be the fragmented ghost of her human fear. The human side desperately trying to keep her human life and stop herself from transforming back into her true fox form so she can stay human, basically suppressing her real fox from emerging, like we see the Rokurokubi doing in the picture in the trailer. The Rokurokubi and the demons suppressing the fox represent the ugly, evil side of Hinako, the part of her that feels cursed by this cult and ritual. It hates and fears the fox or divine side of her that is trying to awaken, and the struggle within her as she can't accept the fate placed upon her by this cult and wants to desperately continue living a human life. We do get brief glimpses of the seemingly beautiful afterlife filled with flowers. Perhaps this is the afterlife that Hinako could go to ascend or to be at peace, but her trauma and psyche are preventing her from crossing over to it. In Shinto folklore, torii gates traditionally mark the transition from the mundane to the sacred, and a spot where kami, or gods, are welcomed and thought to travel through. The description of the game does mention struggling to reach an inevitable decision that must be made, to put an end to that which must be slain, as well as Hinako choosing to embrace elegance and beauty. Could this elegance and beauty be Hinako choosing to accept her death and her role as the new fox deity? Will she awaken and accept the fox deity sleeping inside of her by going through with this ritual and embracing her destiny to become a beautiful and elegant fox goddess? Or will it lead her to madness, driving her to become cursed to forever suffer, unable to cross over? I suspect this question will probably be answered by the ending, which will be probably determined by various decisions or actions we as Hinako will be taking throughout the game. By the end of the game, I suspect Hinako will be forced to choose between the two sides or spirits within her, one offering her beauty, godlike divinity, and vengeance, aka the Kitsune, the other one seeking to destroy or control her out of fear and resentment, aka the Rokurokubi. This could lead to 3 or more possible endings. A good ending of Hinako returning to her true fox form, crossing over the torii gates and ascending to become a fox deity to watch over the village in the spirit realm. A normal and sad ending where she stays human, losing her friends and being cast out of the village. And a bad ending where Hinako becomes a monstrous Rokurokubi or malevolent Yako fox spirit destined to roam and curse the land, taking revenge against the village and the shrine that wronged her. This concept of being at war with oneself actually leads into my second theory, and one that probably has the most evidence for given the dialogue in the trailer. The second theory I have is that Hinako is suffering from multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, that she is also dead, having already gone through with the ritual, and is now trapped in a time loop, unable to cross over, and forced to relive the ritual and her trauma over and over again. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Didn't I already use this in my last theory for the short message? Well, yes, I did, but I also think there's way more evidence to suggest this may also be the case here as well. In fact, it honestly wouldn't surprise me if some of the ideas that they were originally going to use in the short message were taken and incorporated into Silent Hill F as well. There is actually a lot of evidence to support the theory of Hinako having multiple personalities, as well as Hinako being already dead but trapped in a time loop. During the trailer, we have moments where it appears like Hinako is talking to herself or another internal voice, which strongly hints at a fractured psyche or multiple personalities. We also get the face peeling, which powerfully symbolizes a loss or fragmentation of identity, or the revelation of a hidden self. Given Silent Hill usually focuses on psychological trauma and the manifestation of inner demons, Hinako's suffering from multiple personas or personalities is a very plausible explanation for Hinako's experiences, and aligns pretty well with us having having an unreliable narrator and a distorted reality shaped by her traumatized mental state. However, based on Ryukishi's previous works, it could also be likely that this may be more of a psychological battle of the mind between two different personas within Hinako. Ryukishi has delved into multiple personalities and trauma with his other works, such as Iwaihime and Umineko, and he did a superb job of fleshing those characters and those storylines out. In Iwaihime, it was with Ruria Nonokawa, a high school idol that developed a split personality as the preteen magical Lily, a role of a magical girl princess that Ruria took on as an idol in her preteen years. In Umineko, it was a bit more complex, but way more fleshed out, focusing on a character with multiple personalities born from trauma and conflicting desires. But I'll avoid going into details here to avoid spoilers for those who want to play Umineko for themselves. All I'll say though is that the plot and characters created in Umineko and how everything came together at the end was an incredibly well-crafted, compelling, and fascinating story of exploring the depths of emotional trauma and family. And if we get something like that here, we are definitely in for a treat. Continuing on though, we also see the Shrine Maidens wearing no masks, which typically represent different personas or personalities. The implication is that Hinako may be struggling with her sense of self, possibly due to past traumas, abuse, or societal pressures placed upon her by the village and this weird cult. This eternal conflict could be central to the game's narrative, exploring how personal and collective identities are constructed and deconstructed. Even the monsters seem to represent or symbolize this, especially the monstrous doll creature, which has multiple different dolls, symbolizing a bunch of different personas or people within Hinako, all fused together and jumbled up inside of her. The Kitsune and Rokurokubi imagery could represent two opposing personalities or personas hidden within Hinako Shimazu, locked in a symbolic war for control or dominance over her identity and perception of reality. The Kitsune, being divine but also tricksters and shapeshifters, could represent the persona Hinako presents to the outside world, perhaps the deceiving, seemingly normal, innocent, or even cheerful high school girl that she presents to her friends, and everyone else trying to hide her true identity or putting on a false face. This persona may be a coping mechanism, a mask she wears to hide trauma, guilt, or a darker nature. The Kitsune's cunning could represent her ability to deceive others or even herself to survive or maintain a sense of normalcy. This part of her might desperately try to maintain illusions, deny painful truths, or manipulate situations to avoid confronting the horror. The Rokurokubi, with its hidden grotesque form that emerges, could represent a deeply buried trauma, a monstrous truth about Hinako or her past, or a part of her psyche that is terrifying and uncontrollable and wants to escape the ritual. As mentioned before, this is the part she keeps hidden, perhaps even from herself. It embodies the pain, the shame, the guilt, or the sheer terror she has experienced or is capable of, but also the monstrous, undeniable truth of the town's history, or the consequences of past actions that can no longer be concealed by illusion. The Rokurokubi's often female form could tie into themes of female suffering, or the specific traumas experienced by women in the game's setting, and the themes mentioned in the rating description as Hinako struggles with the societal pressures put upon women like her in the 1960s. Hinako may be suffering from not just her own trauma, but from generational trauma such as the weight of tradition, the fear of obedience, as well as the stories of gods and monsters told to control girls like her. These myths may have once explained societal cruelty. Now though, in her unraveling mind, or in the supernatural world she's trapped in, they return as living nightmares. If we look at it this way, then the image of the Rokurokubi attacking the Kitsune becomes a powerful visual metaphor for the violent clash between these two or more internal personalities or personas within Hinako as she struggles with everything that has happened to her. The Kitsune being attacked symbolizes the failure of deception and illusion to contain this truth. The reality of the horror, aka the Rokurokubi, is breaking through the lies and trickery of the false Kitsune persona. It signifies the hidden trauma, aka the Rokurokubi, aggressively trying to overwhelm and destroy the deceptive facade or normal persona, aka the Kitsune. This could manifest as moments of psychotic break, as Hinako's perceptions are constantly being challenged, experiencing a loss of control, terrifying hallucinations that shatter her perceived reality, or the emergence of a darker, more monstrous aspect of her personality, just like the voice that tells Hinako that she could have killed her off at any time. The Rokurokubi, the Kitsune, and Yokai in Silent Hill F are likely more than just monsters or evil forces waiting to be defeated. They are creatures steeped in folklore, with characteristics that may represent facets of Hinako's inner world, and a symbolic representation for Hinako's inner psychological distress and spiritual conflict shaped by the legend she was raised with, as her mind breaks down under the pressure of being a sacrificial offering, with her psyche projecting its trauma in the forms available to her. As for Hinako being dead, I think the imagery with the spider lilies and the dialogue we hear in the trailer speaks for itself in this matter. The dreamlike pacing, sudden shifts in time, space, and the unearthly beauty of the flower growths all suggest a post-life limbo rather than a physical experience. We see a picture of Hinako seemingly deceased, hinting at this being a shrine or funeral for her, and even seeing what appears to be a disgusting feast laid out like a banquet or dinner, which are usually held during or after funerals and wakes, celebrating the life of the deceased. We hear Hinako herself or one of her friends saying that they can't fool them because Hinako is already dead. We have the teaser trailer of who we now know to be Hinako in a boat crossing the torii gates to the afterlife. The vibrant yet unsettling red spider lilies, Higanbana, traditionally associated with death and the underworld in Japanese folklore, bloom aggressively everywhere, seemingly consuming the environment and even characters. Japanese ghost stories often feature spirits trapped by unresolved trauma, particularly women who are victims of injustice, which would be a strong cultural fit here. If Hinako is indeed dead, the events of the game could be a descent into her own personal hell, a manifestation of her final moments, or a journey through a purgatorial version of Ibisugoka. The beautiful yet terrifying choice mentioned in the game's description could relate to the circumstances surrounding her death, perhaps a sacrifice made willingly or unwillingly, or having to accept her death and having to move on to the afterlife to fulfill her role as the cult's new fox deity. Hinako could be a spirit unaware of her death, living through a loop constructed by her own guilt or someone else's curse. Silent Hill F may explore her journey to acceptance and transcendence, or her descent into becoming a new part of the town's folklore. In conclusion, though, there are so many different directions that Ryukishi could go in with this story, but I think these two theories are a great start. Judging by the trailer, though, we can expect to uncover fragmented journals, letters, or timelines piecing together multiple truths. You can bet we will also be diving into Hinako and the town of Ibisugoku a lot more as well. The game seems to be an excellent blend of Western psychological horror with Japanese spiritual horror and folklore. Not just ghosts, but cursed legacies, yokai, and karmic cycles, bridging the gap between supernatural, myth, and the mind. So what do you guys think of my theories? Do you think the Order is involved, or is this a new cult? Do you think Hinako failed some ritual that made Ibisugoka become cursed? Could Hinako be possessed by a Kitsune deity, or malevolent yokai forces vying for control of her? Or could she herself be a Kitsune or fox deity in human form, but with no memory of it? Do you think that Hinako is dead and stuck in some time loop, or could she be caught up in some kind of deeply traumatic psychological trauma that has fractured her psyche into different personas or personalities? Please let me know in the comments below. This trailer has already given me a lot to talk and theorize about, so I would love to chat about the new trailer and theorize with you all in the comments below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or check out my other Ryukishi deep dive video that I did based on the first trailer a few months ago. I hope you enjoyed my analysis. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you all next time.